uh, prayerful, and we are hopeful that the testimony will encourage you to kind of step out in faith a little bit and step out in prayer. Our testimony tonight is going to be by Dave Talley. And Dave texted me. We were texting back and forth about testimony, and he texted me. I told him, I said, hey, do you have a scripture? Do you have a theme maybe for prayer? Because sometimes that helps to get our minds onto a topic and for prayer. And he said, this is probably too corny, ... How about pray for the strays? And I thought, well, it rhymes, right? It does. And I thought, that is awesome, because I don't know about you, but day after day, I find myself feeling like a stray. And I'm so thankful that God has called us back in and says, you are worthy. You are worthy. You are wonderfully made, fearfully and wonderfully made. And He's known you since you were in your mother's womb, and He loves you. Those are promises from the book of Psalms, and it encourages me. So tonight will be Pray for the Strays, and so Dave Talley is going to share his testimony on that. So Dave, come on up.
All right. Well, I was really hoping we'd get like a freak blizzard so there wouldn't be as many people here tonight. But well, that didn't happen. So I want to start with a Bible verse. I want to start with 1 Timothy chapter 1, verses 15 through 17. And Paul writes to Timothy, this is a faithful saying and worthy of all acceptance, that Christ Jesus came into the world to save sinners, of who I am chief. I mean, I can't even hardly look at that without... Man, I'm crying 30 seconds in. I'll probably have to get my composure a few times. So, I mean, what a beautiful thing. I mean, I can't compare myself to Paul in hardly any way, as much as I'd like to, but in that, I can understand that. I'll get over this here in a second, and then it might actually get to rolling. When you really inflect and think about some of the things that you've done and where you've come from, it's moving. And I have had a very full life, and about, I guess about 75% of it has been bad, real bad. Whenever I started doing this, things that I kind of thought I was over kind of came rushing back to me. And some of them, brought me a lot of joy. But then I thought about a lot of the stuff that I had then did in response to to so many blessings I had that I didn't realize they were blessings. I didn't understand that concept. I didn't grow up in church. I had an awareness of Jesus. I played baseball and soccer for the Catholic Church next to our house. So I had to go to Mass every once in a while because they made us. But, that was really it. And I was born to an underage mother. And her dad, in order to kind of save face, I guess, with the family, took me from her at the hospital and gave me to his girlfriend to raise, to kind of keep everything on the down low. And she was kind of busy, so that didn't really work out. So she would take me to, family members' house, aunts, uncles, cousins, and all that. And then finally, apparently, as the story was told to me, it made me sick a lot. A lot of respiratory issues and stuff like that. Little bitty asthmatic kid And so finally, her dad, who was a the irony is I used to never cry. Her dad took me and said that really thought I'd do better than this. If you're all wanting to pray right now that I'll get over this and we can get on with it. Anyway, her dad said, that's my boy now. And that was the only father I ever knew. So anyhow, he was a big, foul-mouthed, shotgun shooting, meat shoot, freaking ham winning, sawed-off son of a gun. Who there was just stories about, how mean this man was, and I got none of that. But I said, that was the only father I knew. His wife, we called them Granny and Grandpa. They raised all kinds of kids and grandkids. But what I got out of both of them was nothing but love. Granny was the closest thing to church that I saw. She was a dear, sweet little Irish woman, about 5'2", and thought the world of me. And her and Grandpa were like Mutt and Jeff. He was about 6'3" and loud. She was 5'2" and quiet. He worked with vulgarity like it was oil paintings. She she never hardly said anything bad, and she read her Bible constantly, and she prayed. And she prayed constantly for all of us grandkids, including me, even though they considered me a son. Wonderful, wonderful people. And when I quit envisioning them and thinking about them, that's probably when I quit bawling. They've been gone a while, and I miss them dearly. So anyway, so I had a kid's dream living with them. They camped all the time. They always had what they call clubhouses, which would be camping shacks. They had a camper, and they had lots that they would go to, and we fished, and we hunted, and I had an incredible early life. I never really asked questions like, well, who's my dad? Well, who's my mom? Well, that's your mom. Oh, okay. I don't live with her, but cool. Well, that's your sister. She's mean. I don't want to be around her. It was different, but why ask? When you're living in like this kid's dream life, why would you ask? Sorry for all you locals, but I grew up in the best town in the freaking area, Arnold. Went to the best school around. We were really close to the river. We'd run trot lines. Arnold, when I was growing up, there was chickens. We had livestock. So it was wonderful. So why ask? You wouldn't really care. This is my family. Good enough. When I was about 11, almost 12, we actually did start going to a church. My aunt had found a church, and she told my grandma, who'd been burnt by churches before and wasn't really interested, that she found a good one. And so Granny went a few times, and she never preached to me. She would always point out that God saved me and put me with Him. God took care of me, but she was never preachy. And incredible, wonderful person. So then she came and she said, well, you'd like it, the pastor's son skateboard before church. And I'm like, all right, I'll go. Because, they had a nice big parking lot. So I went and started hanging around them. And, they're really good folks. And one time, I listened to the message. I felt, convicted. And I went to the altar. And, about a month later, I got baptized. And I'm like, I think I'm going to be a Christian. And a couple weeks later, I got arrested the first time. So I don't know if it took or not. But, from that point, things started changing. And it wasn't too long after that I found out about my birth, and I found out about kind of how I got to where I was. And that kind of started changing me inside a little bit, because I didn't know how to accept it. I didn't know how to handle it. And a 12, 13-year-old boy doesn't know how to handle anything anyway. There's not much more useless than a teenage boy. Sorry, son. But it was just kind of a turmoil-filled point in my life, and they were afraid that maybe they would take me away from them, because I didn't even have real birth certificates. I've got 3 birth certificates, none of which are legitimate. You can't pull that off nowadays. One of them only had a last name on there with baby boy and a mother's name. That was pretty choice. My grandpa pretty much left with me before they could do the paperwork. And, as the story goes, he got down to about Hillsboro, where he was going to drop me off out at Limbeck Lake, and he forgot to ask the doctor what to feed me. So he claims that was why he stopped in the bar, so he could call the hospital. I have my doubts now. And I always thought that was my mom's boyfriend. And I was like, man, this guy's a loudmouth jerk. He had like a Carolina accent, drove a Lincoln. He was the antithesis of my grandpa, who I love so dearly. I didn't like that guy. And then as all this started panning out, and they started having concerns, and I had to go talk to the deputy juvenile officer and all this, then I find out, wait a minute, he's your actual blood. We just took you in. Nah, not that guy. No. And it flipped a switch in me. And I just turned into a little hoodlum after that. Everything that I thought was true was not. And it's really self-righteous crybaby stuff. It's not legitimate. Just because you find something like that out is not a reason to go off the deep end. But being a wine bag, I did. Screw this. I'll do whatever I want, And I felt like a man without a land. And I just didn't have anybody really to tell me one way or another. And then my grandpa had a stroke, the good one. And so it was kind of hard for him to get around and take care of the property we had up there. So they decided to move to Bismarck. And I sure wasn't going with them to Bismarck. The thought of leaving Fox School to go to Bismarck School, nah, that wasn't even going to be humored. So they went ahead and moved down there. And they were originally from Leadwood when they were young. And then I moved into a house with my mom and her boyfriend, my birth grandpa. And it entered into a very kind of a dark, depressed time in my life, because then it really was anything goes, and there really weren't any rules on me. And by that time, I'd kind of gotten into all the stuff little mouthy punks like me got into: fighting, vandalism, curfew violations, just anything we could do. You name it. We even tried the bag of poo on the porch one time, but my buddy Mike, who I talked into pooing in the bag, he peed in it too, because he said I didn't know what else to do, so it wouldn't light. So we just had a bag of poo on the neighbor's porch. So we were miscreants, and being that time era, that was like the pre-grunge era. So we had like the jean jackets with the Iron Maiden patches, and we'd save up our money, go to concerts, and all that kind of stuff. And it just kind of it just kind of went from there. But that was kind of what set the stage. And by the time I was 15, I got expelled from Ridgewood, which is one of Fox's junior highs, because of the number of fights and just me being kind of a general troublemaker. My grades were always good. School wasn't hard for me, but I kind of used it as my stage to be a jerk, and to let out all that anger I had because of my situation. I thought, I'm miserable. I'll make everybody else miserable. And because my mom was a teacher, guess what my target was? Which, by the way, that men's retreat we went to, I even told my wife, I'm like, you're not going to believe who I'm rooming with. She's like, who? I'm like, the principal. Like, God's got a sense of humor. Don't think he doesn't. My life has been just a running joke. But that was ironic. And then I got to know you, and I'm like, he's actually cool. But with that chaos, I'm going to go into Romans 1:29 through 32. Who, knowing the righteous judgment of God, that those who practice such things are deserving of death, not only do the same, but approve of those who practice them. So by that point in my life, I knew better. I went to church just long enough to know better. And my grandma always let me know she was praying for me. I would go every once in a while down to Bismarck, spend a weekend with them, stuff like that. And she didn't preach. She would take a situation that I'd gotten myself into, and then she would show me how God kept me out of that being worse, and let me know she was praying for me. It was what she did. So right after I got thrown out of Ridgewood, my grandpa died. Kind of suddenly, kind of not. And that was really rough because at 16, it was a month for my 16th birthday. And being the only father figure that I had, and despising the other father figure that I had so much, it was horrible for me. Me and the other grandfather, we fought verbally and physically, and that was when I learned that when you're almost 16 and you hit your growth spurt early and you've been lifting and you decide you're gonna mouth off at the table, don't, because old men are stronger than they appear and will punch you in the throat, literally, and knock you out the chair and then continue eating like nothing happened. But anyway, after that happened, the family all got together, and Granny, being kind of small and fearful, didn't want to live alone. So everybody kind of got together and decided, well, Dave got thrown out of school. He's not doing anything. He could probably, be better off living in Bismarck. Get him out of Arnold. Send him down there. Because, there's nothing bad happening in Bismarck, Missouri. So I moved down to Bismarck in the early 90s, which was when the Bismarck underworld was quite impressive. And so I went from the freaking frying pan into the fire. So not long after I moved there, I found several girlfriends, a band to join, built a quarter pipe in my grandma's garage for us to all hang out and skate in, and started selling pot. And once again, school was pretty easy, did pretty good, got thrown out way too much. Loved to fight, horrible at it, by the way, but enjoyed it. And, before I was even 17, we had a gig every weekend. I had way too many girlfriends in different parts. I tried to gap them out, though, because, I had like one in Westport, and then one in Deloge, and then one in Bismarck, so I tried to be smart about it, and always liked older women until I met my wife, and was really living a fleshly mess. I mean, when you look back on it now, it's like, I can't believe anybody could do that or treat people like that or behave like that at such a young age. Me, I thought, I'm a stud. I got this going on. And me and my brother-in-law, we were like kindred spirits when I first met him. Because even though he thought he was pretty rude and pretty sarcastic and pretty cold-blooded, he didn't mean nothing until he met me. But we were perfect for each other. And somewhere in that mess, his little sister absolutely hated me. For how long? First, first year or so? Yeah, yeah. I mean, but I was always crashing there. We get back from a gig or something, it'd be late, so I'd pass out on Dino's bed, and we were there a lot in the basement. And she tried to get her dad to throw me out for wiping boogers on the wall. Uh, but I kept on living like that for, I'd like to say, and then I saw the light, but I didn't. I kept on living like that until I got thrown out of my second school, and I was doing really well. But some things happened, and I went off and got into it with a teacher who called another teacher, and I got into it with him. So then they led me down to the teacher's lounge while they were eating lunch. And I commenced to unleash with a string of profanity, like the dad in A Christmas Story when the freaking, lost the lug nuts to the tire. It was an embarrassing, pathetic display of anger. But by this time, I had turned so cold-blooded. I knew what was right. I knew what was wrong, but I didn't care. The world revolved around me. And I thought way more of myself than I ever should have. I was a pretty disgusting person. And I kind of culminated that. I moved out at 17. And right after that, I ended up getting a girlfriend pregnant. And wasn't prepared for it. And although I was so cold-hearted and so jaded to everything, that shook me to my core because of being a child without a family. Doing that to someone else bothered me. That bothered me. And because we weren't getting along, and because of the kind of person I was by that time, I was doing, pretty much any kind of drug I could get my hand on at any given time. I wasn't, particular. And because of other things, womanizing, and she wasn't real hip to having her around me, but so then that just kind of made me delve deeper into what I was doing, and got to a point where it was just really off the charts. At some point in there, my dear wife went from despising me at that time to developing a crush, and then that developed to her telling her dad that we were dating, and then Larry turned red and got his shotgun, and for real. And I think it wasn't until she started crying that he didn't come kill me. So I did what any respecting, at that time, I guess 17, almost 18-year-old would do. I moved again, and I moved to Ironton to hide, and kept on living the way I was living. And then the drug use got worse and worse, and until, really nobody wanted a whole lot to do with me. It's a vicious circle. You start doing it, but then you don't want to spend money on it, so then you start selling it to do it, but then you've got extra, so then it's like, well, I might as well do that up. And then, of course, you end up depressed. You end up sad. You end up a wretch. You end up a pathetic excuse for a human being. And you're the last to see it. So at that time, Mandy would not talk to me, and neither would a lot of other people that were worth talking to. But I went through a real dark time, and drug use was just off the charts by the time that was like all I did. Got really involved in meth at that point, and did that for a couple of years, and thankfully was able to get away from it. But the thing that kind of got me away from it was then me and Mandy had ran into each other again, and we started talking. We were just friends, and the more I hung out with her, and the more I talked, the more I realized I'm screwing this up, and I started realizing more and more, I really love her. I wasn't good at love. I didn't know how to love. I didn't understand love, but I really loved her. And so we started hanging out again, and she gave me one stipulation: no meth. Crap. Okay. So, I got away from that slowly but surely. With only a few fallings off the wagon, I walked away from that because she was worth it. And I didn't didn't know of anybody else I gave enough of a crap about for that at all. But by this time, my ex, with whom I'd had a child, was not letting me see her, and pretty much informed me that she was going to do anything she could to make sure that I never saw her, which was really rough on me. So I just kind of put that out of my mind and tried not to fight, because I didn't want to get involved in weird court stuff or arguing, bickering, fighting, none of that. So I'm like, whatever, she'll change her mind. She'll change her mind. So then we went ahead and moved on with our lives. I had gotten a job. Mandy graduated, gotten a job. We'd moved in together. Started having a quasi-normal life, except for quasi-normal for me was I'd go ahead and wake up and get high before I went to work, and I'd go to work, and then after work, I'd go ahead and get high, and then I'd start drinking. It was just, that was normal. That was like, I'm doing so much better. I'm not doing meth. Early on living together, she got kind of mad at me because she'd come home and me and my buddy John that was living with us would be eating acid and embarrassing her in front of the neighborhood and whatnot. But, it was normal. We were, in our mind, living a normal life. And it took a long time before I realized that wasn't. But, as time went on, I started getting a feeling, though, that there's more to life than this. There's more to life than this. And one time I was sitting down in my basement where I had like my little workshop and a pool table and everything, and, doing what I do. And I don't know if it was God speaking to me or the doobie I just smoked, but I had this down deep inside feeling it's all getting ready to go down. It's all going to change. Whatever, that's creepy, but I ain't going to let that bother me. Well, it did. Over the course of the time that we had lived together for about 8-9 years, all my friends that didn't get out of the lifestyle died, one after another. Some of them in bad ways, some of them slowly and painfully. Some of them were debilitated, paralyzed, you name it. But just, the others went to prison, made the papers, murders, overdoses, a little bit of everything, and some of hers did as well. And it just kind of became commonplace. I was a pallbearer regularly. And then her best friend died, and we buried her on my 30th birthday. And for some reason, something changed within us. And we started kind of purging ourselves to each other and getting everything out that we hadn't told each other and held back from each other. And it was hard and it was hurtful. And we didn't know how to handle it. So, that led to probably the roughest time in our marriage. And, I didn't know if we were going to make it through it. And then that led to more things and depression. And I just didn't even want to live anymore. And then I got delivered papers at work that my ex's second husband, whatever it was going to adopt my daughter. So I just went totally sideways on that. We get Psalm 69 now. It felt like everything that I had built and had come to was all of a sudden just falling on top of me. And when you're depressed, boy, David can really make you feel, like he understands. So then we have, save me, O God, for the waters have come up to my neck. I sink in deep mire where there is no standing, and I have come into deep waters where the floods overflow me. I'm weary with my crying, my throat is dry, my eyes fail while I wait for my God. Those who hate me without cause are more than the hairs of my head, and they are mighty who would destroy me, being my enemies wrongfully. Though I have stolen nothing, I still must restore it. O God, you know my foolishness, and my sins are not hidden from you. Let not those who wait for you, O Lord, of God of hosts, be ashamed because of me. Let not those who seek you be confounded because of me, O God of Israel. And that just really touched me and really spoke to my heart, because I felt, even though I made my own bed 10 times over, I guess I somehow thought that I shouldn't have to pay for what I had done. I felt like, the birds shouldn't come home to roost, and, they did. So I had to go through a purging and a learning. And for the first time, we started talking about going to church, because still, after all those years, my dear sweet granny still prayed for me, still loved me, and still let me know about it about weekly, and still never preached at me. She pulled a gun on me one time, but she never preached at me. That was Jesse's uncle's fault, by the way. So I knew that that was the answer. I knew that, that was the only way I was going to get out of this. So, we both started crying out to God. And about that same time, a guy I used to work with that moved off to California, much to the puzzlement of all the rest of us guys, came back and was starting a church. And Lance, who I've worked side by side with forever, had just gotten saved. So he's on fire, and I'm in the dumps, So it's like it was hard to be around him. I'm like, dude, I don't want to hear about it. And then I started listening to the same tapes that Mike listened to. He had a bunch of tapes of Daniel taught by Ray Bentley. And that was kind of the final realization of what I needed in my life. And great series on Daniel. And it changed everything. So then we went to a church that her aunt and uncle went to. And we had had a son by then. I can't believe I left that out. I finally had another child, and it was very moving, and it's hard to explain until you have one that you don't have, regardless of the reason. That then once you have another one, and you touch them, you hold them, and then he started growing up, but David was a handful. So our first, some of you that were here and knew him back then know what I'm talking about. The first church we went to, they brought him back. This was her aunt. And she brought him back going, I'm not watching him. So then we went to the Iron Mountain Assembly of God with my grandma, which was beautiful because she got to see her prayers answered. So she prayed for me for, at this point, 30 years. And that was a beautiful thing. And she was in the early stages of Alzheimer's. But it was sweet. And it was a special moment for the both of us. We let her name David, and I think Alzheimer's might have kicked in because she said, well, I don't care what you name him, just name him David. All right. So then, her church, the next youngest person there other than us was probably 75. I think the guitar player was like 100. It was older folks. So it's like, well, I'm super glad I got to go with her, but this isn't our church. But then Lance kept on me. So I went to the original Parkland Chapel building in the funky loading dock of the back of the factory there. And we were broken, but we were very open. And instead of preaching, we heard teaching. And instead of a topical message, we heard something that, you know how it works. It hit us right where we needed to be. And it spoke to our hearts. And after that, there was no question in our mind. I don't know if I was saved when I was 11 or 12. I don't know, because there was clearly no fruit in my life. I haven't told you guys a 16th of what happened because there ain't enough time. And I asked Donnie a while ago what statute of limitations were, but I didn't want to push it. But it was, it all came together in God's timing the way that it always does. And we've never questioned since. And I'm so thankful. But, the fact that my grandma, no matter how bad I got, no matter how many times I would be asleep in my truck in the yard, puke. One time I blamed my dog for throwing up on the back steps because she woke up mad and yelling about, vomit being on the back steps. I said, I don't know. I guess Bud got up there and did it. She said, well, that dog ate muscatoli then. But she never lost her love for me. She always loved me and prayed for me. You know, I mean, I wasn't just your average prodigal. I was a straight up stray dog. Um, had no family, had no love in my heart for most of my life. Was a cold-hearted, ignorant, mean, useless individual. And somehow, and I think a lot of it was through her prayers. The Lord brought me through all that and blessed me with a family, and blessed me with a wife. I never would have figured. And it had not so many things happened because of this little old woman and her love. Pretty sure that I would have killed myself a long time ago. And one person praying diligently with love for someone can change their whole life. And love for a child that doesn't have love can eventually, even though it takes time, at least it did for me, can change many people's lives. Because now I've impacted more people just in my immediate family, you know. And not because of anything that I did. I just finally answered a call. And, you know, said my second sinner's prayer in the machine shop toilet at U.S. Tool. And that's wanting it there. If you're willing to get down on your knees in a toilet at U.S. Tool. This isn't even the new building. I'm talking about the old building. But I'm very thankful. So don't ever quit praying for your prodigals. Don't ever quit praying for your strays. No matter how long it might take. No matter how bad it could be. Because like I said, I was much worse than I could ever paint for you guys here. And it's certainly not a boast or a brag. It's shameful. But it's real. And we get the last verse, please. I want to end with Jeremiah 29, 11 to 12. For I know the thoughts that I think towards you, says the Lord. Thoughts of peace, not of evil, to give you a future and a hope. Then you will call upon me and go and pray to me, and I will listen to you. I don't know how I could end it better. So, now that I've cried like a baby in front of a whole bunch of people, I think I'll just wrap it up with that. But don't ever lose hope. No matter how bad the situation is, no matter how bad they might be, no matter how bad their addiction, no matter how bad their struggles. And for some of us, it's hard to even wrap your head around love. Pray that they learn love. You know, if you don't have a family, if you're raised without blood, it makes it hard for you to understand a father's love, which sometimes makes it hard to understand God's love. But just keep praying for them. Some of them will come around. So, that's it.
Psalms 139, verse 12 says, Indeed, the darkness shall not hide from you, God, but the night shines as the day. The darkness and the light are both alike to you. For you formed my inward parts. You covered me in my mother's womb. I will praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are your works, and that my soul knows very well. So let's do this a little different tonight. If you would, I'm going to ask you to stand up, get with about 3 to 5 people. So stand up, grab hands with about 3 to 5 people around you. Just group up. I'd like you to hold hands. Connect with each other for a few moments, and I'd like us to just take about 5 minutes to pray for those that have strayed. Pray for those that have strayed. Take some time and pray for someone right now that was in a situation like Dave was, someone that doesn't feel worthy, that doesn't feel loved, that doesn't feel accepted, that doesn't feel like they have a family, that doesn't feel like they can get away from addiction, that they can get away from sin's grasp and hold on them. They can't get away from death. Whatever it is that they are astray, and pray for them to know that they are fearfully and wonderfully made at this time, Lord. Please.